honored to be speaking at this platform with Elite CISO, and thank you so much, Shira, for making me part of this. Shira and I go long, like we know each other for a very, very long time. Like I know Vikas for a very long time. Uh, about me, I have been in the industry for over a decade and a half and been involved in security communities and security companies at different scale, from a product company to services based company. Currently, I'm working with a company named Sneak, SNYK. It's a software security company. And when I'm not working with Sneak, I actually work with different communities where I serve on OWASP board. OWASP is an application security community. Apart from that, I also run InfoSec Girls and InfoSec Diversity in India, where we educate students, kids, and we try and bring more diversity to the workforce. That's a little bit about me. Thank you.
Perfect. So as you understand, Vandana is a super impressive woman in cybersecurity, and I'm so proud she agreed to join this session today. Now, Vandana and I sat together and asked ourselves, how can we help CISOs and CIOs in their cloud journey? Some of you are on this call today and you have not started the cloud journey. Maybe you are just thinking about it. Maybe you are just starting to migrate some of your environments, and maybe you are working in a cloud native company that was born in the cloud and is completely fluent in the cloud. And we try to look at the industry and the general trends that we see in the market today, and we nailed down 7 challenges that we think all of you should be aware today, because they can meet you in each part of the journey. And this is based on our experience, on what we see with our friends, colleagues, the community, prospects, customers. So it is based on our experience, and these are very, very popular problems that we see in the industry today. The concept is going to be that we will give 5 minutes to ourselves to discuss the topic and the mitigation or the strategies to handle these problems. You are all welcome to put questions on the chat. We will answer them at the end, and if we do not have enough time to answer everything, I will write a blog at the end of the session with answers to all of your questions. So please don't hesitate, put down any question that you have, and we will make sure to address all of them. So I would like to get started with our first topic of the day: insufficient identity and access management. Identity and access management is not a new concept. You have been using identity and access management in the on-prem as well. But in the cloud vendor created a IAM as the most important line of defense today. And why is that? Network configuration is no longer a solid guardrail that we can trust. In the past, in the on-prem days, you had your data center in the basement, and you had the cables that connected it to the internet, and hopefully you had the firewall in between. So network was the gateway, the firewall was the gatekeeper, and IP, the internet protocol, was the way to do security. But in the cloud, you can reuse IP addresses. You can, in a click of a button, spin up an entire application that is available online from anywhere in the world. So network is not really the line of defense for your cloud environment. But identity and access management is. The cloud vendors made it, I don't want to call it simple, because obviously we keep on making mistakes around this, but they made it usable for us. They made sure we are able to give an identity for every cloud component. We used to think that identity is something that is related to the user, right? You see me here on the screen. I have a username, I have a password, I have an identity. But your container also has an identity. Your S3 bucket also has an identity. This identity is a JSON file that describes what this specific entity is allowed to do. And obviously, if we want to talk about identity of a container, this identity would tell us who is this container allowed to talk to? Who is allowed to initiate or to trigger this container to run some kind of action? We need to describe those things, and we need to use identity and access management to do it. Now, I know what you guys are thinking. Oh my God, I have 1,000 containers. I can't do this. And this is exactly why the cloud vendors and other security products were created, in order to help you to automate and scale the management of IAM. Vandana, I would like to stop for a moment and ask you how you see this, and what is a best practice to handle insufficient identity and access management.
Thank you so much, Hira. Actually, you nailed the point that insufficient identity and access management is like a common cause which happens in the cloud, especially around the security breaches. If I'll go by the statistics, according to 2020 report by CSA, which is Cloud Security Alliance, IAM was the top cause of cloud security incidents in the previous year. And if we talk about the number of the percentage, it was 15%. That's a huge number, and especially if I fast forward, 2020 end, everybody started talking about zero trust. Everybody thought that zero trust is IAM, but it's actually more than that. And IAM has been there since we started talking about we need authentication. But we were giving some attention to it. Okay, we can do it. But then over the years, when we started the cost of breaches, so 2021 study of IBM Ponemon Research found out that average cost of a data breach involving credential was just 4.37 billion. So now that's a huge number. Yep. So this actually needs assistance. So we just don't need to take IAM that, okay, there's a username and password. We need to define the context behind it. Who the user is, whether they need the right access, whether when they move from one team to another or leave the organization, how exactly we are removing the access. At the same time, are we using multi-factor authentication? What kind of multi-factor authentication are we using? I think all of these contexts needs to be built around it, or we will keep seeing these breaches with Divi Cloud to Redlock to Verkada security camera breach, which exposed footage from thousands of cameras in schools, hospitals, and businesses, which put them at risk around the world. So absolutely, IAM configuration is one of the top things that we need to look at and define the context properly.
One of the most actionable advices I can give you around identity and access management is, first of all, to make sure that your team is aware of this concept and is granting IAM policy for every component that you have. The next phase would be not using the same IAM policy for all the components. This is something that I also saw in the past. One organization telling me, yeah, we are serverless, so we have the same IAM policy for all of our components. So absolutely not. There are products to help you manage IAM policies for your entire infrastructure. I know it sounds difficult, but when you have a product like a portfolio of policies that can be assigned automatically and dynamically, this is going to save you a lot of time and significantly reduce the attack surface on your cloud application. Anything to add before we move to the next? I
would just say, yeah, I would just say that I love the point about security rule sets in the cloud, because I've seen people saying that, oh, I have access to anything and everything. And at the same time, we have users created, but they have not defined the roles properly. So you have to define the roles properly and then map all the users to those roles, so that as and when person joins in, you're not taking much time and thinking, okay, this is the person, this team is going to join, this is the role, and we're going to assign the role. So I think that's really helps. It eases the system, and then it is for the first time, you might face challenges, but over the years, it's only going to give you benefits.
Agreed. Ready to move on to the next point?
Absolutely. That's very close to my heart and one of my favorite topics and one of my research topics, which is about third-party and software supply chain risks. Now, a lot of you must be involved in this, must be aware about it, but some of you who've not worked around this area. So third-party software supply chain risks refer to potential risk or vulnerabilities which happens because of third-party softwares. And when we talk about development, deployment, and maintenance, uh, 80 to 90% of the code or the ecosystem that we use is open source. We love open source. We try and use as much as possible, but it comes with its own risks. Especially if I talk about cloud, there are like several risks that it brings on. There are insecure cloud services as softwares that provided by the third-party vendors that we start using. uh, I work with a lot of third-party vendors, but what I really need is to understand what they are providing me. I'll give you an example. In 2021 December, Log4j happened. I was on vacation, enjoying vacation after a year long and the whole exhaustion. But then my phone started beeping. Everyone started talking about Log4j. What was the issue? Are we not handling security well? Trust me, everyone is giving their best, and security has been like the utmost importance. But still, we were not sure whether we are vulnerable or not, or the services that we are taking from the third party vendors, whether they are making us vulnerable or not. All the top companies to startups, everyone was discussing about it. So we need to be very, very sure what we have in our house, and then only we can fix it. So third party risks actually highlight that. And on top of it, uh, we were talking about IAM. So similar to that, we talk about misconfiguration or improperly managed cloud services. Like if we do not manage our own cloud services well, what will happen? It will only invite the breaches and cyber attacks. No one can save us. Anything that's on the internet, we always assume that it's already breached. What we are trying to do is we're trying to make sure that we are building security on top of it. We have secure data as much as possible. And in 2020, we couldn't avoid going to cloud. There were organizations which were not even planning to move to cloud, but they had to either think of shutting shops or move to cloud. So they started moving to cloud. But what happened? It brought a lot of risks. So these issues with Log4j to Equifax breach to all of these breach or Capital One, where a lot of credit cards and users were involved. So what are the things that we can do? The first thing for any leadership, what, because it's not just that the ground team is working, development team or security team is working and they're going to take care of it. Now we have a DevSecOps practices, everything is going to be fine. Trust me, that's not going to suffice everything. What we need to do is we need to do the assessment properly. Leaders can work with the IT and security team to assess that risk posed by the third party vendors, because if we don't know the list of vendors that we are working with or interacting with, trust me, it's going to be a big mess. So vendor management. Then there are security standards and security frameworks which are shared by many organizations or open source organizations. Started with Cloud Security Alliance, which provides security trust and assurance registry, which is STAR program, which we can pick up and start using it. Another thing is incident response program. Third party risk is not just for development team or security team or the application security team or DevSecOps team. It is for the incident response team as well, where we build an incident response plan. If something new comes in, how are we going to handle it? If let's say because of Log4j, there's an attack that happens, how are we going to handle it? Similarly, think of situation with Equifax. There was an Apache older version that was there. There was a time lag between that software update. Now there were other issues that were discussed and found and what not happened, and this breach happened. So what we realized that we need to work continuously on it. So leadership needs to make sure that the organization is continuously monitoring and improving the services. There's an agreement that yes, we're going to measure the posture of cloud security. So cloud security posture management is very, very important. It's not just for IAM, not just for third-party vendors, but overall security posture. And I think discussion is very important between the leadership and the people who are working on ground. What do you say, Shira?
So I agree. Of course, you said many important points. I think that maintaining a secure posture, of course, as a whole, is extremely important. But then sometimes people ask themselves, well, yeah, the big picture is important, but how do I handle the issues themselves? And when we talk about third parties and supply chain risks, sometimes I ask people, hey, do you know what third parties are you using in your application? And people can name a few. And then I show them that they have no idea that they have 10 different cross-account roles in their AWS account that are connected to products they're not even using. One of the developers wanted to do a trial with Sumo Logic, so they connected their cloud account to Sumo Logic and forgot about it. What happens is that right now there are credentials enabling certain kind of access. Maybe it's just a read, maybe it's a full access, I don't know. But it is enabling some kind of access between your environment and the third party's environment. And then if that third party gets hacked, this might put you in risk and you don't even know it. So making sure you are aware at what third parties have access to your account and revoking this access when it is not in use is extremely important. And I think it's a first step. So all of you, when we finish this session today, you can go and check which third parties are connected to your environment and make sure that, you know, sometimes I have users onboarding to Solvo and I see that they have a third-party software in their cloud account that was not used in 3 years. I can promise you that if it was not used in 3 years, you can revoke those credentials and nothing is going to happen. If in 3 years nobody used it, they're not going to use it tomorrow. I hope you were not paying for 3 years for a product you did not use. So this is a small but very actionable thing you can do today to understand the posture and reduce it. Are we ready to move on to our next topic?
Absolutely. And I just want to add one single item that let's start working towards building software bill of materials or building a database of all the vendors that we are interacting with and all the services that we are using. Not just in a case where in the development phase, we are tracking all the libraries, but at the case wherein we are tracking all our vendors as well. If we are not working with them, let's revoke their access. Very, very important to have that.
Thank you. Now, our next point, which is also very popular these days, is called shadow data. Data and data security are extremely important these days for many reasons. All of us, even if we are not a data kind of company, we all have some kind of data, and our software products are based on taking a piece of data, analyzing it, presenting it to the user, putting the calculation somewhere else, and then helping someone else make a smart decision. So data is everything. Data is behind all of our products and all of our decisions. And all of our environments contain some kind of data. Is it sensitive? Is it PII? Do we have any compliance regulation around it? That depends. But the thing is that sometimes people assume that the data that they have is not so sensitive. I will give you an example. In the last year, Uber had several security incidents. The last one they had included a leakage of information about their employees. And they said, listen, it's not PII. We did not hurt our customers. This was names and email addresses and starting date of our employees. And my say is that this is actually pretty serious because this is information an attacker can take and use for social engineering. They can call an employee that started working yesterday, telling them, hello, this is Shira from IT. I need your password. I just sent you a code to your phone. Can you give me those 4 digits? So any data can be used by the malicious right hands. We should always think that any data can be exploited. So don't think about, oh, this data is not important, nobody can exploit it. Assume it can be exploitable. And now let's make sure we handle it the right way. And the reason why Vandana and I decided to name this a risk as shadow IT is because when I ask you, where are your sensitive data resources? You're going to tell me, oh, don't worry, It's in production, it is well protected, it is encrypted, nobody has access. I will tell you, oh, okay. But how is your team testing the application in staging and in dev? On what data are they testing? I see CISOs, scratching their head. They have no idea that one of the developers took a dump, not all the database, just a portion of the database, and put it in a different environment just to test the application. This is something that happened to Imperva a few years ago. Old data of real customers. When I say old, it was 2 years old, but data of customers in pre-production environments. So this is the shadow data. This is data we had no idea existed somewhere, and we need to protect it just as much as we protect the data in production. It is the same data. It can cause the same risk, either to us or to our customers or to our users or to our employees. But one way or another, this is going to hurt our business. It might put us out of business. We might end up paying large amounts of fines. I don't know if you guys are aware of the new regulation in California, the CPRA regulation. The minimum fine for each piece of data is going to be $2,500. Now, if in your database you have 100,000 records, just multiply that and think about the money you're going to pay. Similar regulation exists in Europe, in other states, in Latin America, and also in Asia. So this is something you're going to meet all the time. The most important and also not so difficult thing to do is to make sure that you're familiar with every data resource that anybody spins in your environment, and that you have in your environment guardrails for any data resource. Even if it's an S3 bucket with photos of your kids and your cat, make sure when a new S3 bucket is spinned up, it has the right guardrails. This is something you can set up as default in your cloud environment, and make sure that every new resource has those guardrails. And if anyone is trying to violate the minimum guardrails, you will be notified and handle it right away, not next year in the next audit that you have. We don't want to wait for the next audit. This is something we have to do immediately. This is a very easy thing to do that will be very worthy for you in the long run. Vandana, any additions?
Yeah, I think I agree with you on that, especially when we talk about shadow data. In the past few years, we have lost the track of what's personal and what's official. Those boundaries are fading away, especially during COVID, when my work laptop was not working. Suddenly I had to use my personal laptop. But then my work made sure that my personal laptop is encrypted, which I was like, okay, let's finish it as soon as possible and get the laptop. So it took me a month to get a new laptop, but that time my work laptop was encrypted. But think of situation where we are using our personal GitHub for the official purpose. We have the official versions and code and whatnot on the personal thing. If I leave the organization, what happens next? How crazy that can be. And there was a study in 2019 done by Symantec. They found that 87% of one of the organization's employee, they have uploaded their sensitive corporate data to the personal cloud storage. Like, do we really want that? No, we don't want that. If the person leaves the organization or becomes disgruntled, what happens next? So shadow data is like a big problem where we need to have proper education for the employees and teams. And while we do that, we need to do audits, we need to do assessments, and at the same time, we need to have probably cloud security access brokers or cloud access security brokers, CASBs. Like, it's one of my favorite things wherein you have proper solutions to detect and block access to unsanctioned cloud services. Because if you don't do it, there would be no boundary. And if something happens, you wouldn't even realize where things went south. And all of these legal implications to regulations, to bills and laws would just come running to us. We cannot avoid them. So let's be very, very vigilant about it.
Yep. Let's make sure we protect our data and our customers and our business. Next point, Vandana.
Yeah, absolutely. So next point is about human error and misconfiguration. The way we say to err is human. So human error and misconfiguration in cloud environments are very common. Like we talk about, like we make small mistakes. We tend to forget few things. We tend to leave few things open so that it gives us easy access. But what happens if we don't um, properly configure cloud services and application? It leads to breaches. Very simple. It leads to issues like somebody getting access to our data, and that's it. Nothing else. They may be able to sell it somewhere which we don't want, or they may be able to show it on the internet. Now, if I talk about statistics around it, where things can go wrong. So, if I talk about Ponemon Institute research report or the research reports which have been conducted by the consortiums, these human errors are very common. What we really need to do is we need to have automated systems. Now, people say, no, 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 no. Still, we need issues. Still, we see issues. But let me tell you, these human errors and misconfigurations can be avoided as much as possible with these automated system, which can help us give us the statistics. Okay, these many people, these many services are open. Do we want S3 buckets to be open for everyone? Do we want our database to be accessible by anyone and everyone, or have like a password which is like easy to use? Tell me this thing: do we share our password with anyone? Just a simple question. And
Hopefully
try
not.
to, hopefully not. Right? Okay, so passwords are like toothbrushes. We do not share our toothbrush with anyone, like it's our personal hygiene. Similarly, we should not share our credentials. We should not share our resources with anyone. Sheila mentioned in the beginning that we share our same policy with everyone, so we should not share the same policy in all our environments as well. We should have specific defined policy for every environment. Similarly, for these issues which we talk about misconfiguration, we should be understanding how exactly we can train our staff, how we can have proper understanding of our environment. Now, I'll tell you something very interesting. A lot of my friends in our discussions happen, oh, this is something which is very, very new, cool. This is a new tool. We should start using it. And there was one discussion where we were all sitting, and one of my CISO friends said, oh, we should just get this tool. And they got the tool. But what happens next? That this tool was not usable at all. So we need to have an understanding of our environment and appetite, that is it going to be useful and how much useful it is going to be. If not, what will happen? We would not be able to use it. And on top of it, what happens is we buy these cool technologies, but we don't understand the nitty-gritties behind it because we don't understand the basics of them. We can misconfigure them. We realize that we cannot handle them well, but they're part of the environment. They take care of data, inflow, outflow, and the breaches happen. So we have to be very cautious and understanding of what we have. Like our houses, we have four doors, windows, but when we go on a vacation, we forget to close one of the windows in the attic, and somebody gets in, takes all our data, and goes away. We don't even realize that there was something which was open. So close as many services as possible if you don't need it. And absolutely, somebody said like proper documentation, proper check of it is equally important while we are automating the services. So that's my 2 cents on it. What do you say, Shira?
So I think that for our audience as CISOs and security executives, we always have this really great tension between saying, oh, security is everyone's job. Developers should do security. We need to train them. We will give them, trainings and teach them how to write secure code, how to secure their cloud environments. And at the end of the day, I am very sorry to say this as an OWASP leader, most of the, most of the time, we are not very successful at this. You do an annual training and the next day you have a new employee on the team and they do, they bring their bad practices from the place where they worked before, and you see the entire team, going down with the security practices until next year's training. So this is something that is happening all the time. Developers don't get security trainings in university, and when they onboard to our organization, we teach them we show them our GitHub and our Jira and our best practices. Most of the time, we don't do enough around security, and honestly, I think that we will not have. Occasionally, we have a developer who is a security champion, but most of the time, they don't care enough about security, and us coming and telling them, you need to care about security, is not going to make them care. So what we need to do is to equip them with the right tools that will help them bake security into their processes. And Vandana was saying before, sometimes you bring in a great tool and they don't adopt it. Why? Because it is not a part of their workflow. It is not helping them. They think it is annoying. It is giving them, annoying notifications. It is not helping them resolve any issue. So they stop using the product. You as the CISO, you feel good about yourself that you have a product to help you with a certain issue. You pay a lot of money for it, but effectively, you're not getting the profit out of the product. And this is why my vision around building Solvo's product was to build a product for security executives that their developers is not going to hate. We wanted to build a product that developers will not even see. They will not feel the product, but they will gain the benefits. It's like giving your warrior the right sword, the sword that is going to help them win the battle of security. Don't give them something they cannot use. Now, Vandana, I don't think we have enough time to go over the next topics, so we can definitely leave them for our next meetup and invite our audience to join us maybe next time. But I wanted to take this opportunity and show you guys a little bit about the kind of product that we at Solvo built. As you already understand, our vision was to create a product that will be helpful to the CISO level, but also to the security practitioners, if it's the DevSecOps team, cloud infrastructure team, to make it very, very, very actionable. I don't want to just give you a list of problems. I want to give you the solutions that are very, very, very easy to enforce. And I'm going to show you what that looks like. Vandana, can you just confirm that you can see my screen?
I can see your screen.
Wonderful. So this is the Solvo console. I will show you a couple of things around here. If you remember, one of the things we talked about was third parties. So you can see over here the third parties that I have in this account. So you can see, of course, it's a demo account, don't worry. You can see here that there are some products that I'm not using anymore. And I should go to my security engineer and tell him, hey, please remove these third parties from my account. But of course, it's a demo account and it is here to help us demo some of those things. I would like to start by showing you our prioritization tool, because every tool is going to produce a lot of alerts, a lot of notifications, but you don't have time to resolve everything. You need to focus on what has the biggest impact on your environment. And this is why we created this findings page that doesn't only give you a list. The list is prioritized based on the impact of this finding on your application, and I will show you what I mean. So over here I have 82 findings in total, coming from different risks. Some of them are exposing data resources, some of them has high CVEs on them. And as you can see, I have different resources in the list, from EC2 to ECS, S3 buckets. So everything goes, they're prioritized by the severity, and I will start with the top severity. So top or most concerning issue that I have in my account right now. And let's see, why is this a very problematic finding? I have here an EC2 instance. And here are the risk factors that made us decide that this is the most crucial security finding in the account. This finding, or this EC2 instance, is publicly exposed and it has an active listener. So it means that we have a live connection to the internet over here. This is something that Solvo tested and verified. This EC2 has high severity CVEs on it. It has excessive permissions to data resources. It means that it has access to data resources and they are excessive. Many of them are unnecessary and can be reduced. And it can read from all the S3 buckets in this account. Now think about it. I can't think about many applications that would need access to all the data resources in the account. Here is the list of the CVEs I have on this instance. And now I have the list of data resources that this EC2 has access to. As you can see, I have many of them, 63. A couple of S3 buckets are also highlighted as extra sensitive. They can be highlighted as extra sensitive because if you're using a data segmentation product, data classification product, Solvo can actually take the findings from that product and use them in order to calculate the risk. When we see sensitive data, Solvo does not look into your data, but if you're using a different product, a third party, to tell you where sensitive data is, we will make it, we will bring it into consideration in our risk factors. If you are not using such a product, we will look at all the data resources as the same unless you tag them as sensitive, and then we will also relate to them as sensitive. So in this case, we have two considered sensitive resources. And over here, I have a map that is describing the network and identity and access management security posture of this EC2 instance. So if you like, what you see on the graph right now is a potential attack surface for this EC2 instance. The EC2 is this one in the middle. And on the left side, I have the network configuration that is enabling access from the internet. So we have a couple of security groups and we have a load balancer. Of course, if you click each one of them, you will see the relevant information. In this case, it's a security group and port 443. So this is the network access I have from the internet going into the EC2 instance. This is the configuration. It is not where we saw traffic. It means that this traffic is available or is allowed. It doesn't mean it was exploited, but it means it is possible. Now, as we move towards the right side of the graph, what we're going to see is the IAM identity and access management configuration. I will make it a little bigger. And if you can see on the screen, we have here a role and a policy. This policy is enabling access to DynamoDB. This is an AWS managed policy. Of course, we can see the information on the left side if I click on it. But an important thing for you to see is the red and orange lines. A red line means this permission is completely excessive. And if we remove it, nothing is going to happen to our application. It is not going to break. It is not going to stop working. It will keep on working exactly the same as it worked before. So Solvo is giving us an idea about the existing permissions and the permissions we can remove without any concern or worry that something is going to happen to our application. Everything you see in orange means that the application is using it, but we can reduce it. For example, I scroll down here. I have here a permission to S3, and this is again a full access to S3. I know it is full access to S3 because I see here on the screen S3 wildcard, so this is access to all the buckets. So what I can only guess, actually I don't need to guess. I have here the list of actions that are allowed in this IAM policy. Everything that is red is not necessary. If I remove it, nothing is going to happen to the application. Orange means that we need it, but not all of it. So it means that this application is doing the get action, but it doesn't need all the resources. Maybe it just needs one bucket. So now we understand what our problems are and where are the excessive permissions. And if you recall, at the beginning of our conversation, I told you that Solvo is all about fixing problems and not only telling you you have a problem. So let me show you how we do that, and I believe you will find it very interesting. Up until now, I only told you this EC2 instance is vulnerable and has excessive IAM permissions and has access to sensitive data resources. Vandana, do you see an alternative screen now? I just clicked one of the, I opened a new tab, so I want to make sure everyone can see that.
Yes, after EC2 instance, you have opened the instance details.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So now I'm in the EC2 instance page. And what I have here is the Solvo analysis for this specific instance permissions. So based on our analysis, we understand it has access to 17 AWS services, and it can execute more than 150 actions. But it only needs access to 2 services and to execute 3 actions. That's it. And before we had a lot of access to DynamoDB, a lot of access to S3. So without further ado, let me show you how Solvo fixes the problem for you and not just telling you you have a problem. On the left side of the screen, I have the existing security policy. We saw before the access to DynamoDB, some of it was red, some of it was orange. What you see here is the existing policy. It is an AWS managed policy. And as you can see, it has a lot of access to a lot of services to run a lot of actions that the application does not need. So if I move to the right side of the screen, and I will also filter so that the screen is not very busy, I will see that what Solvo created for us is a policy that is specifying the resource and the action we want to run. So instead of giving DynamoDB full access or S3 full access, we are enabling access to a very specific DynamoDB resource and even table, giving a specific action, just the get item action. Everything else we saw before I filtered, look at the number of resources, services, actions that we have here. Instead of all of this, Solvo narrowed it down to 1 resource and 1 action. Of course, some policies are more complex, so we can add more partitions, so more resources and more actions, but we make it very, very granular. In fact, Solvo is the product that is creating the most granular security policies today. It is also available in Terraform, CloudFormation, or CLI command, so enforcing this is extremely easy. Now, we don't have a lot of time, but I want to show you one thing real quick, and this is our compliance module. Compliance is something I'm sure all of you are handling one way or another. Different frameworks, different compliance and methodologies, but this is something all of us are doing. We should not be doing this only before the audit. This is something we recommend to do all year long. So using the Solvo product, you can either check the box and choose relevant frameworks you want to be compliant to, and we will keep track on in our console, so you will be notified for violations, especially for critical violations, but also, you know, any kind of violation that you want to be notified about. And another cool thing that we have here is the ability to create our own rules. Sometimes you have a specific need. For example, you want to make sure that you spin up new resources only in a specific region, or you want to make sure everyone has MFA. So you can come up with different ideas and write them yourself in the Solvo console. I will show you something that I created myself here. A few weeks ago, I gave a webinar about the CPRA regulation. One of the things this regulation requests is making sure that we have a data retention policy, that we delete data resources when we don't need this data anymore, so we don't forget it. So I wrote a rule here to make sure that all of my S3 buckets have a data retention policy. And in this case, I have one violation. I have one S3 bucket that is not compliant to this violation. Another thing we discussed before was the third-party access, if you recall. So you don't need to go into the AWS console and ask yourself, what third parties do I have in this account? By using the third-party monitoring rule, you can always know which third parties are in your account and make sure you're familiar with them. And if you're not, you can revoke their keys very, very easily. There are many other things I can talk about in the Solvo console, but we don't have a lot of time for this today. I would like to invite all of you to try out the product for free. All of you can start a free trial in the Solvo console. And if you're concerned about onboarding and how difficult it is, I would like to promise you that onboarding to the Solvo console is extremely easy, and it literally takes 1 minute in our accounts page. You click on AWS, you launch a CloudFormation stack, and you're done. And in 1 hour, you will know what risks and vulnerabilities exist in your account. Please visit us at solvo.cloud, and I'll be more than happy to see all of you and to help all of you in maintaining a compliant and secure cloud environment.
Great. So thank you very much, Vandana and Shira. One of the most fascinating session it has been. Really appreciate you guys sharing the knowledge. So we have like 3-4 more minutes before the we hit the ceiling. Guys, please raise your hand if you would like to ask any question. I will unmute you and then you can ask a question. Okay, one person raised and then lowered the head. Where are you, Dr. Rajan? Okay, Devash, Mr. Nag, go ahead and ask your question. And I'm unmuting Mr. Anil as well. Yeah, Devshri.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, thank you for the great session. Only one question which I have is that we understand that we security professionals are there to like manage the security. However, if you go to the application owners, so they are the persons who actually govern the applications. And when we take the report or we take the entire security posture to them, sometimes they don't accept that. They say that I mean those access are really required for the persons, so they are not ready to go or ready to accept the security report. So now the strategy, because you are well experienced, so I just want to know that the kind of a strategy we usually follow to like convince them.
So I can give you my advice, and then I'm sure Vandana also has you know, her best practices. But one of the reasons we created the graph module in Solvo, and I think you saw it before, we also have a separate graph module in the product. But one of the reasons why we had it was because we wanted you to have an easy conversation with your app owner, telling them, listen, you see this is a red arrow, it means you're not using it. The application has never used this permission. Let's remove it. Oh, you don't believe me? Let me show it to you in the staging environment, and I will help you feel more comfortable or more confident in this decision. I know this is a very difficult decision, difficult conversation you need to have with your team. Of course, we want to be respectful, but also be confident in what we say. When we tell them you do not need this, I want you to have the right knowledge or the right information to show them, hey, you really are not using this.
Yeah, I think, I mean, maybe we can like try to use the graphical interface or more information to make them convince. Yeah, I agree with that.
Cool. Let's take
Thank you.
one more question, maybe. Anil, go ahead, ask your question.
Thanks, Vikas. Thanks you very much. Great session. Just wanted to check how is it across platform, because most of us use multi-platform. We have different services across the platforms. So does this tool provide us the collaborative information across the platforms also?
So Solvo is supporting AWS and Azure. GCP will come later. But you're absolutely right. Being multi-cloud is a different kind of challenge. It was also, by the way, one of the challenges Vandana and I wanted to discuss, but we did not have enough time. I think that for those of you who are using multi-cloud, I agree, you need to find a platform that will support you in all of your different platforms or all the different cloud vendors, because otherwise it will be a much harder challenge. Also, ask yourself if you really need a multi-cloud strategy, right? It is not right for everyone. I meet some organizations that, for example, are running on AWS and just use GCP for BigQuery, for the big data services. So this, while you will call this a multi-cloud architecture, this is a very limited multi-cloud architecture, and it is much easier to handle the connectivity between the two environments. So I'm just saying that we need to think about the architecture and make sure we make the right decision.
Yeah, one follow-up question on that is that, like, say, if my services are spread across these different platforms. So my question was, let's say, for example, some of these services that I use are from the AWS, some of them, like, say, my mailing service, or some of my other application like SQL and other stuff, which are already on Azure. So would I be able to still use both of them in the single subscription and try to get a comprehensive report on that?
So it is possible that you might. I'm happy to take it offline with you and try to figure out the best solution. And if I don't think this is the best solution, I will also recommend a different solution that I hope will be a good fit for you. I want your life to be easy. While I like my product, I want you to, to make the best decision for you.
But Shira, my life is getting difficult because it's already 12 o'clock and we have so many people who have raised their hand. So probably we need another session just for Q&A. Sorry, guys, we cannot take more questions. What you can do is you can put your questions in chat or Q&A box. I will capture those questions, share with Shira and Vandana, and they will write a blog post on that, as Shira mentioned, and those questions will be answered. Now, let me again rush the closing because it's already 12 o'clock. So guys, what you see on the screen is the participation certificate. As I said, we are moving from traditional PDF-based certificate to a blockchain-based verifiable certificate, right? Now, this is a certificate you can get. It's blockchain verified. You can simply click on verify. You can also put this certificate on your LinkedIn profile. So if you go to license and certification section, you can simply just click on over add, and then you can put your certificate URL that I will share how you can download. And then once you put it over here, it will be available as verifiable certificate, right? You can simply just click on show credential, or anybody can click on show credential and they can see your certificate. This is the one which we issued for our ISO 27001 workshop. How do you get this certificate? If you want to get the verifiable blockchain-based certificate, all you have to do is go to EliteCISOs website, click on event, click on upcoming event, and then click on CPE certificate. Now you have to pay a very small fees of 100 rupees for this certificate. Put your full name over here, put your email address where you want this certificate, and the secret to download certificate is risk management, right? Now, why risk management? Because we are coming up with a workshop on risk management. Again, Satish Bhai is going to deliver that workshop. Last week, we had ISO 27001 workshop delivered by Satish ji, and it was a phenomenal workshop. We had about 85 people participating. Everybody appreciated the great knowledge and the depth Satish has for the delivery. So registrations are open. You guys can go ahead and register for it. Last but not the least is the Wheel of Fortune. The giveaway is a nice USB multi-adapter. So what I'm going to do is I will spin it 3 times, right? We are going to pick 3 winners. This one is for everyone who registered. So you see we have about 443 people who registered. You can't even figure out whether your name is there or not. I'm going to spin it once. If your name comes, go to the chat and say, yes, you are in this session. I have to rush it because it's already late, right? So I'm not sure who just registered at CMS IT services. Um, so this will not be valid. I will spin it one more time. Okay. And this one goes to Mr. Parth. Mr. Parth, if you are there in the session, go to the chat and say yes. I am going to remove it. I'm going to remove all these 442 entries from here. And I'm going to put only the people who supported the Elite CISO's LinkedIn post regarding this webinar, right? By reposting that. So 59 people supported that. So I'm going to put all those 59 people over here and then going to spin this particular wheel. And let's see who the second winner is going to be. Akhil Verma, my very good friend and chapter admin from Bangalore. Akhil, I hope you are there. If you are attending, go to the chat and say yes. Last one I'm spinning now is going to Mr. Amitabh Bhardwaj. So Mr. Amit, Mr. Akhil, if you are there in this session, again, go to the chat and say yes. With this, thank you very much, everyone, for attending. Thank you, Vandana. Thank you, Shira. Phenomenal session it has been. Bye for now.
Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank
Bye.
you. Take care.
Yeah.